Welcome back to World Talks, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Jastrzębska. February 24th marked 4 years of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And now, on February 28th, a new escalation has unfolded, with Israel and the United States launching an attack on Iran. As events in the Middle East and the Gulf region develop rapidly, President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine knows, quote, all too well what such escalation means, pointing to Iran's role in supporting Russia's war against Ukraine. To discuss this, I am joined by Volodymyr Yermolenko, Editor-in-Chief, UkraineWorld.org. Good morning, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Hello.
So, with news that Khamenei has been killed and Iran entering a volatile succession period, what are the most immediate channels of impact on Russia? Weapons cooperation, sanctions, evasion networks, oil markets, perhaps regional distraction?
Well, it's obvious that the Iranian regime was a big ally of Russia, and every Ukrainian knows it personally because Russia has been using the Iranian drones called Shahid. And basically, I'm living in a Kyiv suburb called Brovary, and we are hearing these drones from time to time, quite often, and they're really threatening. So they're really going very deep into Ukrainian territory, and lots of people have been killed with these Iranian drones. And Ukrainian energy infrastructure has suffered a lot from it. We are mostly living without many days, many hours without electricity. The winter was very, very difficult with -20 outside, and it was all caused by Iranian drones and, of course, by Russian missiles. So we know all too well this military cooperation between the two regimes, so authoritarian regimes. And obviously, this situation shows that, these authoritarian regimes are very fragile. They can be targeted and they can be destroyed. So we really hope, I personally really hope that there will be a regime change in Iran, and the democratic forces in Iran will take power. But Russia also shows itself as a weak partner of Iran, as it showed earlier, a weak partner of Assad's Syria, not being able to protect its allies.
Right. And if Iran's leadership becomes consumed by internal stability and retaliation, so does this reduce Tehran's ability to sustain external military cooperation here with Russia? Or do you think that security services could actually double down on partners like Russia?
Well, I think that I'm not a military expert, but I think that, of course, the Iranian capacities can be weakened right now. Unfortunately, we know that Russia itself produces a lot of drones according to Iranian technology, but I think Iran, if the regime survives, the Iran will be needing these weapons more, and we see that they have been a threat not only to Israel but also to the Gulf Arab countries. So many people around the Gulf can feel what does it mean to be under Iranian strikes.
So Russia publicly condemned strikes and reaffirmed ties with Iran. But behind the scenes, does Moscow have meaningful leverage to help Iran militarily now? Or is it stretched too thin? You said they're a weak ally.
Well, I don't think they can help Iran in any meaningful way. I think they're even waiting for what will be happening, because they might be benefiting from this escalation because of the lags and the blockage of the oil exports from the Gulf. I think they're waiting for it because they really want oil prices to go up, and we know that the Russian budget is really dependent on oil prices, and this is the major tool of them to finance the war against Ukraine. But frankly speaking, there's so much in the war against Ukraine. There's so much, they're losing all their forces here. They need support from Iran. They need support from North Korea. They basically are shown as of course as a country which is not on the level of its ambitions to be the great power, to be one of the great armies in the world. Therefore, I hope their capacity will weaken in the war against Ukraine. But yeah, they are certainly not able to protect Iran and protect, as they earlier were not able to protect Assad. And that shows that their forces are completely in the war against Ukraine.
Volodymyr, so you've mentioned that Ukrainian allies emphasize Iran's role in Shahid supply, right? So how dependent is Russia today on physical shipments from Iran versus the domestic production lines that are localized in Russia?
Well, look, I'm a philosopher. I'm not a military expert. I cannot tell you. I know that there are productions in Russia, but it's better to ask somebody else on this question. What I can say is that Shahid drones are very efficient, and that means that Russia really was dependent on Iranian technology in this case. And why they are efficient? Because they're cheap, and they're cheap. They're much cheaper than missiles, for example. They're much cheaper than ballistic missiles. And you should understand that, for example, Russia is using the so-called strategy of the so-called combined strikes, when they're using both missiles and drones to target Ukrainian energy, to target Ukrainian water supply. And they want to continue this because see what Ukrainians are striking deep inside Russia. They're basically striking the elements of Russian destruction economy, military economy. We are striking the military bases, we are striking the oil refineries because they form the basis for the Russian military budget. What Russians are striking, they're not striking the Ukrainian military infrastructure. They're striking civilian infrastructure. They're striking the networks of life and not networks of destruction. And therefore, what we fear in Ukraine is that after this very horrible winter, when Russia was really aiming at destroying Ukrainian heating infrastructure and provoking a humanitarian catastrophe in Ukraine, during spring and summer, Russians will be trying to destroy the water supplies, for example, all those things that form a normal human life. Will they be using drones? Of course. And will they have enough capacity to produce their own drones according to Iranian technology? Maybe yes. Military experts should say that. But I think the Iranian component in all this shows that the war has been changing, and it's not only about right now in the 21st century war. It's not a question of very expensive high precision weapons. It's also a question how much cheaper weapons you might have to have a massive attack on civilians, on cities, etc. And this Iranian-Russian connection was going in this direction and might be going in this direction in the future.
And Volodymyr, you are on the ground in Kyiv. So do tell me, how was the news of the attack on Iran received in the Ukrainian capital? How do Ukrainians feel about this?
Well, look, we really sympathize with the democratic movement in Iran. We see in many parallels with our own democratic movements. We of course consider the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah regime, as a part of this coalition that wants to destroy Ukraine, that wants to destroy Europe, and of course the toppling of this regime, for me personally, I cannot say for everybody, but for me personally, this might be showing a new Iran. This might also, stimulate other processes around the world. But at the same time, we are worried, as I said already, about whether Russia will try to use it for its purposes. For example, if the prices of oil will go up, then it will only feed the Russian military budget. So it's all interconnected. And obviously, I think Ukrainian fight today is a global fight. It shows that the democracy, even in a weaker position, it can win. And Iran is, from what I see, Iran is a country where these democratic movements should finally win.
And how will the situation in the Middle East impact Russia's leverage at the negotiating table?
Well, look, Russia is not taking negotiations seriously. It rather plays in negotiations. It's kind of a negotiation game to show that, yeah, we're willing to, to achieve peace. What our international observers are a little bit blind about is that the whole question right now is focused on whether Ukraine will be forced out of the so-called Donbass, the cities like Kramatorsk and Slavyansk and others, while we forget to say, I mean, not we, but many international observers forget to say that Russia has many more of Ukrainian territories included into Russian constitution. For example, cities of Kherson or cities of Zaporizhia, and it can include any other, city or territory into its constitution. It's like the voluntary act that they are making. They can say that some cities in Lithuania are now Russian, or some cities in Poland are now Russian, or some cities in Ukraine are now Russian, and then they might be saying, well, these are our territories, and we will continue the war for them. Right now, de facto, they have much more Ukrainian territories included into their constitution as part of Russian territories, and therefore, even if we imagine a situation when Ukraine will retreat from the Donbass cities, they will not stop. And of course, Ukrainians will not retreat because the war has been going on for 12 years. Ukrainians are defending our territory, and it will never be acceptable for Ukrainian society to go away, to run away.
So Zelensky's top aide, Kirill Budanov, said last night that Russia has agreed to the U.S. proposal for Ukraine post-war security guarantees. How significant is this?
Well, again, this is very important because Ukraine needs security guarantees. It might be a membership in NATO or some other form. But again, in the way how it is discussed, it's also kind of misleading a little bit to me, because if the security guarantees apply only after the end of the war, if Russia attacks again, then why they cannot apply now? If the Ukrainian partners say, okay, we will protect Ukraine if Russia attacks again, then the question is, what are we going to do now? And here, Ukraine, of course, benefits a lot from European support. It suffers a lot from the lack of American support, much lesser amount of American support. We need American technologies for air defense. We need more missiles to down Russian missiles and drones. Let me remind you that if Russia attacks Ukrainian cities, then we have hundreds of drones and dozens or even hundreds of missiles in just one night, going on one city or several cities. And of course, I mean, it's not just several drones going over your territory. It's hundreds and hundreds of drones, and it's dozens of missiles. So we need this air defense. And I think many people in Europe should be asking their question, so what will happen if Russia attacks some of the villages in EU member states, in the Baltic states or in Poland or in other countries? What will happen if Russia escalates against the EU member states? And I think the answer is that Europe is still unprepared for this, and Russia knows that Europe is unprepared. Therefore, we should all be doing to weaken Russia. Only weakening Russia militarily will push them into taking negotiations seriously. Right now, they're just playing games.
Volodymyr Yermolenko, Editor-in-Chief, UkraineWorld.org. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP.